guess we can get started. We're a couple of minutes early when everybody's here. And we'll call the meeting to order. Before we begin, I'd like to welcome this month's Leadership Development Program participants. We're so happy to have you here today, and if you would, stand and introduce yourselves and tell us where you work and how long you've been at KUB.
Okay. My name is Bob Kolwick. I'm in our electrical engineering group, team lead over the wires division, and I've been at KUB for 10 years.
Sorry. Douglas Kimball. I'm also an electrical engineer. I'm over the electrical standards and specifications team, and I've been with KUB for about 8 years.
Chris McCormick. I work in the new service department. I'm team lead over the marketing reps and work also in the development group. Been here 34 years.
I'm Mike Hillard. I'm a supervisor in underground construction. I've been here 27 years.
I'm Russell Mitchell, working at MSP, and I've been here 2.5 years.
John Petrowski. I work in the new service, and I've been with KUB almost 14 years.
We're glad to have you all with us today. Mr. Coley, if you would do the roll call.
Note that all are present except Commissioner Anderson.
All righty.
Madam Chair.
You all have had your minutes mailed out. Does anybody have any changes, or do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Today we have I guess the second installment of Resolution 1316, which is the KUB blueprint, including the vision statement, mission statement, measures of success, and keys to success and shared values.
Commissioners, I'll remind you last month that Mark Walker shared with you our strategic framework. We now have a name for it. As everything needs a name, we've named it the KUB Blueprint. Mark will bring it back to you today. We have incorporated the great input that we got from you following the meeting last month, and we've incorporated that into it, and the resolution will ask for your endorsement of the KUB Blueprint.
Commissioners, good afternoon. As Ms. Roach said, last month we did give a full presentation on the proposed strategic framework document, which does formalize KUB's vision, mission, and shared values. And as promised, today we do bring before you a resolution that it formally endorses the strategic framework. And that's the last time I'm going to use those terms, because also, as Ms. Roach said, we have come up with what we hope is a permanent name for the document, and that is the KUB Blueprint. And after last month's meeting, the following week, Susan Edwards and I did a session with our leadership development group, of which we have several members here today, of course. And it was a strategic planning discussion, and we reviewed the blueprint document, and we called it the strategic framework then. And we got some feedback, had a good question and answer session. And part of the feedback was, well, please don't call it that when you roll it out to the organization. So we took heed of their advice, and we have come up with the KUB Blueprint, which we think is an appropriate name, because it does provide a design or a plan for how we are going to achieve the vision that the board has set for us, and that vision to provide our customers with safe, reliable, and affordable utility services. So it fits well, and it also will make it a lot easier to communicate to the organization as a more somewhat charismatic name, I guess you could call it. We talked about this last month, but really the essence of the document is its focus on stewardship, customer service, and safety. And in that way, we feel that the document, the blueprint, does reflect the legacy of this board and past KUB boards as well. And also, you may recall from last month's meeting, we made a pledge to you that this is not going to be a flavor of the month. This isn't a passing fad. This isn't a document that after a month or so we're going to put on the shelf or in the drawer so it can collect dust. It is going to be used, and today we reiterate that pledge to the board. It will be a tool that we use to identify strategic is a tool that we'll use to align our goals and align our operations with. It will be a tool that we use to develop both current and future employees. And also, based upon some feedback we received from the LDG group, it's going to be a tool that we build into our performance management system, and that our annual employee evaluations will be linked back to this. And ultimately, all of employees at KUB, top to bottom, will be evaluated based upon how well we're doing in carrying out our vision and mission. So it will be a useful tool. The blueprint itself, I won't go through it at the level of detail we did last month. As you can see, it does, obviously it has our vision in there, and the vision again, why we exist, what we hope to achieve. The mission tells how we're going to fulfill our vision, and that's through stewardship, utility system assets, customers' dollars, and the environment. Measures of success, really 4 dials on a dashboard. We have metrics that are based upon those that we use today, but basically tell us how well we're doing. A balanced scorecard, how well are we doing in fulfilling our vision. 7 keys to success, which really represent the critical day-to-day functions that allow us to accomplish our mission. And then the shared values, which are 7 statements that really define what KUB is all about. It is a reflection of our organization's culture. And so through Resolution 1316, the board is doing a couple of things. 1, they're formally endorsing the blueprint. 2, they're directing the president, CEO, and really staff to take the document, communicate it throughout the organization, and use it as a tool, again, to align our operations and our goals so that we can achieve our mission and fulfill the vision that's been set before us by the board. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Second, whichever.
Do we have any members of the public here that want to be involved in commenting on this? Any other questions or discussion? Mr. Crowley, if you call the roll.
Commissioner Pennell. Aye. Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Pennell.
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams. Aye. Resolution 1316 is passed.
And now we'll hear from our president.
Commissioners, it's hard to believe, but nearly 2 years ago, it was in December 2 years ago, we started our leadership development program with our executives and some of our managers. And the first year of that program was spent a lot on individual assessments and individual learning plans and those sorts of things. But then the group was given 3 projects for them to work on. Today we have a presentation on one of those projects. I'll remind you that each of those projects have had interim reports to this board in that period of time, but today's is pretty much a final report. They have reached a conclusion and therefore a recommendation. Today's report is with regard to the contractor and employee mix. And we have 3 people who are sharing the honors of the presentations today. First is our Manager of Safety Technical Services, Brooke Sinclair. Next is Tracy Hayes, who is the Manager of Construction, which includes overhead and underhead. And then finally, Dennis Upton, our Vice President. So I'll recognize Brooke.
Well, last December, we talked about this workforce project and how our workforce has changed over the years. We also talked about how we've had to change and shift as our workloads have shifted and changed, and how we've had the advent of huge programs like our Phase 10 program, and then later we had Century 2, and then now we have a long-range financial plan that our board has approved for us. It's really helped us to look long range. What we're doing today with our workforce mix works. We're still getting work accomplished and we're doing it well. This is just an opportunity to look, take a step back, maybe take a look strategically and see where we're going, as opposed to allowing those programs to direct us. We want to direct that. I'm going to give you just a recap of what we talked about in December. I'll turn it over to Tracy. He's going to talk to you about where we think we are going to go in the future and those recommendations that we provided to senior staff and how we'll implement that incremental change over time in the next few fiscal years. And then Dennis is going to wrap up with just a quick discussion on diversity, not only in our workforce, but also within our contractor workforce. So our mission since we spoke to you last has not changed. We really have two pieces of that, and that's first to identify those areas where we rely most heavily on outside forces. And then we also are we're charged with assessing the financial, which is the dollar piece, and the operational, which is the work piece, of how that current workforce mix impacts us and any recommended changes that we should have going forward. Our team members are a cross-functional team, but we also wanted to include our management staff as well. So we did lots of discussions with them, and then we benchmarked from other utilities across the states, not just in Tennessee, large, small, multi-utility, and everywhere in between. And we'll talk about those pieces as we move forward with Tracy's piece. So there were several drivers at the time that told us this is a good time to look at this. We can't say enough how important that long-range 10-year financial plan really helps us to look at this long-range work plan that we have in place for all 4 utilities today. Because really, Payson and Century 2 make up this roadmap, and it also makes up the bulk of our budgets. And I'll show you some financials in just a little bit to talk about that. But we also understand the importance of not only just focusing on where our skill sets and expertise are today and where our work is today, but where that should be in the future. So this project is really focused on workforce preparedness as well, as our work is changing for us. But at the end of the day, you cannot capture all costs just in that direct manner. So we had to create a decision-making model that helps us look at those indirect costs. And in addition to those, the impacts that it has on KUB across the board, what we affectionately call the ripple effect of how that will work from all the different work groups. So just to recap from December, we had a strategic approach that we took, and this is how it worked out. We looked from a higher picture, big level, a higher level perspective to conduct that financial and operational analysis. Then we took that information and benchmarked with those other utilities. We created some key decision factors that we spoke about last time, and I'll show you what those are in just a second to remind us all of that. We took those and incorporated them into a decision-making model that takes into account more than just the cost of doing the work, but also the impacts of each of those areas. And then we identified areas and tasks that were more appropriate for that initial evaluation, which is really where we'll talk about those recommendations that we have going forward, and then recommend those changes to our senior staff, which were approved and will be incrementally implementing those over the next few fiscal years. But the important thing was, since we have that long-range plan, we understand where our boundaries are. And inside that plan, we may shift and change dollars, but the end number is the end number, and we will stick with that, and we feel very comfortable with that as well. So we talked about those decision factors, and they're pretty self-explanatory. We did a lot of benchmarking on these as well and felt like this is pretty industry norm. I'll give you a quick example of something that Tracy's going to expand upon later, how these factors really come into play. So when we look at our electric system, it's a pretty broad system, and we brought it down into the network, the downtown network electric system. It's a pretty complex and can be a hazardous environment to work in. We send employees into an enclosed vault with electrical conductors, large electrical equipment, and that is not something that your average contractor really wants to typically get involved in. So it's very difficult to procure those resources outside of KUB. So we have safety considerations, the ability to procure those, but the other piece of that is it takes some pretty specialized expertise for things like cable splicing, which can take 12 to 18 hours for one splice, or rigging and moving large, many thousand-pound pieces of equipment into those small spaces. That expertise comes into play pretty significant, not only now, but in the future as well. But one piece that's important here is also the customer care and satisfaction. A network system is designed to have low to no outages all in of itself. And so we really have to consider that when we're looking at how we can use those resources inside versus out. Because at the end of the day, making repairs, doing maintenance, installations, what have you on that system is a utility core business. So we really haven't even talked about cost at this point. We take those factors and we really feed those into that model and then compare that to the dollar figures and to make those decisions going forward. So when we look at this, we talked about the operational impacts. That's really the work, and then we looked at the financial impacts as well. And when we looked across the board and did that high-level review, we said, where are we spending all of our time and who is performing the work for us? And we found very quickly that the majority of our Payson and Century 2 work evaluation, we really looked at these 4 phases. Again, part of our benchmarking showed us that design, construction, inspection, and maintenance is pretty common across the board for us to look at for all 4 utilities, and it allowed us the ability to really compare apples to apples between the utilities and then between the other utilities outside of KUB that we benchmarked with. So that was the work piece. The financial piece obviously showed us as well. We looked at our $260 million budget for fiscal year 13. About half of that was spent with contractors. And it's a wide variety of contractors, and we continue to have that mix and that focus on having a diverse workforce inside as well as with our contractors. So this makes up large and small and everywhere in this mix. Of that 131, it's about 100 million is going to capital. The other portion is for O&M. But the important thing to note is just all the different things that are feeding into that budget. So we talked about benchmarking, and Tracy's going to talk to us here about how those 4 phases really fed into that benchmarking that we did with the other utilities and how that helped us to make our decisions going forward.
Thanks, Brooke. Commissioners, I'll start out by saying again, we did a lot of the financial and operational analysis, and I'll be referencing those core decision-making, those 7 decision-making models that we were talking about a few minutes ago that Brooke was speaking of. But again, if you look here, and she keeps talking about these 4 components, when we look at our Century 2 work and when we look at our PACE 10 work, it's typically broken up into these 4 components of design, construction, inspection, and maintenance. And we wanted to take a high-level view and say, okay, where is our mix between internal resources and external resources? And if you look over here under the electric side of our business vertically, in the purple area, you'll notice that we've got a mix. It's about 50-50 all the way down the line between design engineering, consulting firms, construction companies, inspection, and doing our maintenance work. It's about half. Now, if you look here at your gas and water on the design side, we're primarily use outside consultants on our gas system. But on our water system, it's about 50-50 in the design areas. And as you work your way down, you can see from the different colors that we're about a mix in different areas that you see there in purple on our maintenance. But in our construction activities, it's primarily contractors. If you move over here to the right-hand side of the chart, you'll look that we're primarily using contractors for our wastewater work. And again, that is, as Brooke referenced, because of our PACE 10 work. We had some short-term goals that we had to take care of quickly, and so we had to utilize and leverage our contractors and consultants to get that work done. This is basically the same slide, except it gives you more details of our evaluation. Again, operationally and financially, we went into many different areas of all 4 of our divisions and looked at this area closely. If you look at the black marks, what you will find is there's some areas where we want to talk about making some changes, and I'll get into some of those details in a few minutes. You'll see some green check marks, and I'm going to point to pole replacements here, where we feel like that there's no changes necessary. We felt like that we've got a good mix of contractors and internal resources doing that work. I'll use pole replacements again as an example. We have many qualified contractors in this community that does 13 kV overhead work. Those contractors are readily available. Also, we have quite a few crews that are trained in that work, and we've got a good balance between our internal resources and our external resources. But as Brooke talked about, we do have some areas, and again, you'll see in these check marks, and I'll get into the details in just a second, there's some areas where we do need to make some modifications. And then lastly, over here on the right-hand side, under our wastewater, there's still some evaluations that we need to make in those areas. Again, we had to ramp up quickly to meet the challenges of PACE 10, and we will also point out that the wastewater work has some really heavy capital intensive equipment that goes with it. Typically the mains are very, very large, they're very deep, and so we need to get into that and evaluate that situation a little more closely over the next few months. Let's talk a little bit about our electric system just for a few minutes. Over here on the left-hand side, this is where we are today. At any given point in time in our system, we have about 34 to 35 crews working. Today, you have about 34 to 35 crews spread across the system. As you can see, the majority of those right now are contract crews. We have approximately 16 KUB crews working today. Over the next 3 years, what we are recommending is some modification in 3 of our areas in the electric system. Substations, downtown network, and our underground cable. And I'm going to talk about each one of those just for a minute. This is a picture of some of our KUB electric crews in one of our substations. This is a 69 breaker. As you can see in the background here, these are breakers as well. This is a new type of breaker, a gas-filled breaker, and these are our older breakers that were put in the 50s, and these are oil-filled breakers. So as a part of our Century 2 program, as everyone's fully aware of, we're in the process of upgrading many of these older pieces of equipment, and we felt like that it's very important that we have key people in place to make those upgrades. Key investment in some of our employees. We've been utilizing contractors to do some of this work, but we felt like we needed to make some incremental adjustments in our employee mix and move some of those resources to our internal resources. Now, this is kind of a unique picture. This is an up-close picture of one of our downtown network splices. This is one of our construction technicians. He's actually in a manhole at Main Street, and he is in the process of splicing in a new piece of cable. Brooke alluded to it a few minutes ago that it takes about 16 to 24 hours to do one of these splices. And when you're putting in this new the new cable that you're replacing, you have 2 splices. So it could be around 32 to 48 hours to do one slice with one piece of cable. This takes years, honestly, to develop this training, this expertise. This is very much a craft. You have to be very, very careful about how you put it together. Debris, moisture, any of those kind of things can cause a fault. So we spend specific amounts of time training our personnel, and in looking and going through our evaluation, we felt like we probably needed to ramp up and increase this area of our expertise for the years to come. Another area where we felt like we needed to make some incremental adjustment is in our resources that work on our underground electric cables. This is one of our construction technicians pulling in cable, and he's hooking this to switch gear. This switch gear is a very important part of our system when it comes to reliability, so you can switch from one cable to the other if we have a fault. That gives us a quick backup plan in case of an outage, or if one of these pieces of cable, if one of these cables goes bad, then we can switch it over. Again, that type of training is not readily available in our contracting community. We do have contractors that can do it, but we felt like it was very important that we make some modifications there, spend a little more time with our KUB resources and ramping those up just a little bit. Again, when we're talking about increasing, we're talking incremental increases overall. Now let's switch gears to our water and gas system. Again, this slide tells you what we have as far as resources, both contractor and KUB crews. The red part demonstrates how many contract crews we have on our system today, and the blue part is how many crews, KUB internal crews that we have. As you can see from this chart, again, incremental changes over the next 3 years is what we're recommending. And these are the areas that we are recommending those changes in: hydrants and valves, gas and water, short extensions, service installations, and also some of our gas safety surveys, and I'm going to talk about those right now. Hydrant replacements, This is a core part of our business. It's very important to all of us for safety, for reliability, obviously, in case of a fire, in case of an emergency. We looked at this and we noticed that we were slim in some of our resources as far as overall knowledge and understanding of our valving system. This particular crew right here is closing a valve on one of our hydrants. And having that understanding of our system and all of the different changes that come with technology is very, very important to us. So we felt like that we needed to look at this area of our resources. This is a small gas crew, one of our small capital crews. One thing that we have noticed that from time to time, when we have bids for contractors, if it's small jobs, many of our contractors are not as interested in that work. It costs a lot to mobilize, to set up, so the per unit cost or the per foot cost sometimes comes in higher than expected. We felt like we needed to have the flexibility internally, if we get a high bid, to switch that over to our KUB crews. And based on our financial analysis, we feel like that we can do that and do that competitively. So this will give us more operational flexibility. There's contractors available to do this work, so it's not about contractor availability. It's more about not being so leveraged by the contractor that we cannot make adjustments and put KUB crews on it if it's in our best financial interest. So this is a little bit of a different factor that we're looking at versus some of the electric suggestions that we were making. This slide right here is one of our construction technicians, Lucas Morgan. He is in the process of tapping a new water main. We've replaced an old galvanized main with a new water main, and this is, for the water industry, fairly new technology. It's polyethylene. It's been around for many years for the gas industry, but really it's only been around for the water industry over the last 8 to 10 years. So we feel like it's important that we increase some of our technical knowledge and understanding of the new, some of the new technology that's coming out. It's important if you're going to repair something in the middle of the night, which our crews typically do that, then you need to understand that technology. And we felt like that we had lost a little bit of that over the last few years because we were utilizing contractors so often. So this is more about staying up to speed on the changes of the industry and being ready to respond when we need to in emergency situations. So wrapping up my portion of it, I would like to say, I mean, this has been a great opportunity. We spent a lot of time going through, again, a lot of financial analysis, a lot of operational analysis, developing those key decision-making factors. I think will serve us well going into the future. I think I've talked a lot about the critical knowledge that our technicians need, and I think that's going to be important for us as we make some of these incremental adjustments. I think financially, it's going to put us in a better position. I think that not being so leveraged by contractors, if we get a bad price or if we get a high price, then to be able to switch over to our KUB resources, that's very, very helpful for us financially. And it helps us if we don't get the favorable contract pricing we're looking for. And again, it's a gradual approach. It's incremental changes over the next 3 years that I feel like is a very fiduciary responsible manner that we're going about this. And then lastly, I think we're going to continue to be able to have the flexibility we need to meet all the demands of our Century 2 and PACE 10 programs. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis, and he's going to carry on and talk about our workforce diversity.
Thank you. Commissioners, this afternoon, I want to spend just a few minutes talking about diversity from two perspectives. First of all, the workforce diversity and also economic diversity. And as with most organizations, policies such as non-discrimination, equal opportunity, those are embedded in your equal opportunity policy. Every organization has those, and we do a very good job with those. The workforce blueprint blueprint for the future that Mark Walker presented a few minutes ago stated that one of the keys for success to that blueprint is to invest or continue investing in the skills, the guess, to the success of the blueprint is to accomplish this objective. That is pretty huge. That's a very strong statement for any organization to make, because that means that particular initiative is going to be measured, monitored, and reported out over time. Similarly, about 12 years or so ago, KUB board adopted procurement guidelines, Article 6 of procurement guidelines, which essentially said it outlined a commitment on KUB to create over time a diverse supplier community. And one of the ways we do that is throughout the year in our procurement department, we hold education and outreach sessions to the business community to let them know about the work opportunities available at KUB. As a matter of fact, this morning, it started at 7:30, we had a doing business with KUB seminar at Millbrook, and we had about 75 small, minority, and women-owned businesses attend that. They were very excited to hear news, information about the goods, services, and construction work that KUB has scheduled for the next year, and they were able to ask questions or get information to better position themselves to compete for those opportunities in the coming months. So we're very proud of that. Now that sort of set the background for diversity, I want to spend just a few minutes talking about some of the performance that we have in diversity. I can hardly contain myself when I look at this slide, because the title really says it all. Record-setting minority hiring in FY14. Needless to say, it was a great year. As a matter of fact, sort of the highest year ever that we had minority hiring of that level. And as you can see, 23% of all full-time employees hired last year were minority. 40% of all students and part-time employees were minority. And that is attributed to a lot of hard work by our human resources department in recruiting, and at the same time working in collaboration with our management staff to identify candidates. But really what this chart demonstrates to me, Commissioner, most of all, it's possible to hire the best qualified candidate in the job market and at the same time create a diverse workforce. It's possible. A lot of organizations say it, but they don't do it, but it is possible. Secondly, Commissioners, this graph, these two graphs show our continued commitment to diversity. The graph on the left shows minority employment over time over the past 6 fiscal years, and you can see the trend. Whoops. The point, that's what I was looking for. As you can see from this graph, Commissioners, the trend for minority employment in the workforce has trended upward over time, and currently stands at 13.2%. And again, we continue to strive to hire qualified employees that reflect the communities that we serve.
Oh, you could have finished your thought, but I just have a question about the percentage. Is this reflected for the general percentage of minority business, women-owned business, the whole umbrella that's in this region? Or do you know? As far as population statistics, things like that?
It's on our.
That's just the number of employees we have working with the 13.4.
No, I'm talking about the slide before where you have minority hires. I'm just wondering, in this region, does that reflect? It's higher. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Oh,
So I was
yes.
just curious.
Yes. That is higher, much higher. Yes. And I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. This graph on the right shows, again, the upward trend in the percentage of contract awards to minority and women-owned businesses. And as you can see in FY14, that percentage stood at 10%. And I want to put that 10% contract utilization in context. That represents over almost $19 million worth of business to minority and women-owned businesses. And that was a huge economic boost to those businesses, most of them from within this community. And if you look at the trend line for the last 4 fiscal years, the percentage of minority and women-owned businesses are receiving contracts either 10% or greater over that time period. So again, both these graphs show continued commitment to diversity, both in employment and also contracting with the minority and women-owned business communities. To kind of wrap up, Commissioners, the workforce strategy presentation, we are very, very appreciative of the fact that the board's position on the 10-year financial plans and also 10-year operation models. That has allowed us to take a long-range view of the work that's being done, particularly the construction. And as Tracy Hayes mentioned, we can sit back and really we can review that work from the standpoint of what's the best mix from a contract standpoint versus KUB workforce, where are critical skills that we need to maintain, and at the same time kind of watch what's going on in the market and make adjustments as needed. We will always be in the business of using contractors. There are sometimes there are projects that give the equipment that's needed or the expertise is necessary to do that. Use contracts. And a good example of that would be a couple of years or so ago, we did an underground under the Tennessee River bore. We had a contractor in a trench and put utilities and connect those utilities on the other side. That is a very complex, difficult project. KUB would probably never invest to do that kind of work, but we, from the standpoint of this workforce group, will always take a look at what's prudent, what's best, look at our decision-making factors, and make recommendations that's in the best interest of KUB. Finally, some of the adjustments in the workforce contract mix that Tracy Hayes mentioned, you'll see in more detail April of next year when we have to find the budget presentation, and we certainly look forward to presenting the information to you at that point and getting your feedback. If there are no further questions, this ends the workforce presentation.
I just want to, as far as the diversity, I've been on here 10 years, and it's been a small climb, but we have been steady with it, and we have measured it, and it continues to rise, which is a good thing.
Well, Tracy, do we own our own blasting company or as from a technical standpoint within KUB?
No.
So we have to contract those out as well?
Yeah, any of that work would be contracted out. Yes, sir.
And when, as far as the wastewater goes, after that's what, 2021?
It'll be forever.
I just wonder if that will take away, now we see that it's mostly contract, when that type of work, do you think it'll be more of a balance if we actually took out the contractors that we're using for Century 21 and the PACE 10 program? If we took those out, or can we?
Yeah, I think that, again, obviously, Ms. Roach points out, we're going to be continuing to do Century 2 and replacement work. We'll continue to look at that balance. We need to look at the wastewater side to see if that balance is where it needs to be. I wouldn't expect, and I'm speaking on behalf of the team and everyone here, I mean, I think it will always be a balance. We feel like there's the model that we've had in the past is, we're looking at incremental tweaks because there's a real advantage to utilizing our contract resources. It's just where we felt like that maybe we've gotten a little weak in some of our expertise that we need to ramp that back up a little bit.
I have a question. You had a slide of representing the crews that are out there now and the change you hope to make in the next 5 years or so. Do the change in crews seem kind of small to me, but maybe do those crews represent specifically the types of work that you went through as far as I can't remember all of them,
Yeah.
but there are certain types of splicing and things like that. Is that what those crews specifically represented, or was it broader than that?
Yes, specifically in those areas, and those are usually 3 to 4 person crews as well. So it's about, if you're looking overall from a staffing standpoint, 35 to 40 employees. Again, that's where it goes back to, and we spend a lot of time evaluating, but at the end of the evaluation, just a slight modification in those areas, because again, the contract resources that we use, in many cases is more than appropriate. There's just that slight modification in each of those areas that we went through.
Does anybody outside of KUB hire KUB workers to work on their electrical systems if our expertise was at a higher level than another utility
The only one I can remember years ago was in the wastewater plant. We assisted, City of Maynardville in the operation of their wastewater plant using our employees during emergency situations, but other than that.
They hired us to
Yeah.
do that for them rather than them contracting with our employees directly though.
Was that in the 90s?
Pardon?
Was that in the 90s?
Yeah. We don't do that anymore.
Tracy, in your overhead statistics, it seemed like you were about equal in contract and employee crews. And do those crews duplicate service? Is there 17 contract crews that can do the same thing as employee crews typically?
With the exception of network. Network is the only area where we have no contract crews that can currently work on our network system, but when it
That's
comes.
downtown.
Yes, the
Okay.
downtown network system, but
So-
the other areas, yes, we have a mix.
And your recommendation, your group's recommendation is to have more employee crews than contract crews. And one of your metrics was cost, so I'm assuming that, because I guess we've kind of gone on the path of having more contractors, but it looks like we've kind of got the bell curve and they're getting more expensive than we could do it ourselves. Is that kind of what y'all have found out?
Yeah, I think one of our challenges was to stay within the financial model. So we felt like if we can bring those resources in-house and remain financially whole and based on our analysis. But to answer your question, yes, I think that there's certain areas, again, where contractors are very, very competitive. And there's other areas where we feel like our internal resources can do it just as cheap, just for the same price.
And we looked at it holistically to manage contractors as a cost as well. We talked last time about you have to inspect, you have to manage, you have to procure. When you start adding in all of those costs, when you're using an outside force, you start to see that it's very competitive. And then you start looking at things like quality and safety and other aspects, and you can start to see some creep depending upon the skill set and the complexity of the work that they're performing, which is why we've made recommendations in certain areas and not in others. So flagging, for instance, traffic control is a good example. We have moved from inside resources when we were taking construction techs and linemen to do flagging to now we moved to a workforce of off-duty police officers, and that gained us quite a bit from not having to have our experts out there doing that role. And then we've migrated to having a third-party expert do that role for us. So they design traffic control, they deploy the people, the materials, the equipment, everything is ready to go so that when our guys get out there, they can work safely and focus on their tasks at hand.
And that's done through an MOU, I would assume, or do we, where's the liability?
We did it.
Yeah, that's a contract that we bid out. And
So the liability is them, not us?
yeah, most of those plans are approved by the city from a traffic control standpoint, or there's a manual that they use that has standard traffic control designs that they will use for that.
Just one additional comment to Commissioner Cannell's question. The example you had in electric, we would never want to go to 100% employees because during storms, we rely on these contractors to not only use the people who are here, but they go out and bring them in, their employees from Georgia, Alabama, wherever. And so we need to maintain that emergency resource. And to do that, you have to have them contracted with you here working on the job. So there's even more than just the work we do every day, but the emergency work is another consideration.
And I had one other question for Dennis on, you had 70 new employees last year, new hires, is that right? Is that
74, I believe.
And what about, how many women did you hire? Is that, I know, in construction, I'm sure that hiring women in construction is difficult to do, but in management, were we pretty equal in terms of the number of women we hired into that type of role, or do we need to focus more on that, or?
I will tell you, we hired 0 people in management. Let me just say that. But in the professional area, does anybody know? Susan, anybody?
It's a good mix. I think it depends from year to year a lot on the mix of classifications we're hiring for. So for example, this year we did some hiring in the construction tech area in line workers. Those are traditionally much harder to fill with women. But I'd say
thank you all. Let me just add a couple of comments. Y'all are welcome to sit down. This all started, if you recall, as a leadership development program for our senior executives and managers. And I want you to know that it's not just the work product and the recommendations. That's very, very important, as you can see. I think this will have an impact on how we do our work and what our work costs in the future. But as important to that is the value of these folks learning and engaging on strategic projects and working with people they don't typically work with, because these are cross-functional teams. I think they learned a lot about what's important in other areas and balancing that and how to work together. And we used to say cats and dogs don't like living together. This process has been very helpful for them as individuals in their learning styles, but also in the value of them working together. And I think that leads to a stronger management team into the future. So I want to thank them for the work they've done. Byproduct of that is not just the work, but the ability to work together and to achieve recommendations that are well thought out and will add value